Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Anna Jenkins, Marketing Coordinator at Core BTS, and welcome to today's webinar, Windows 10 Upgrade with Confidence. I'm sure many of you have questions about upgrading to Windows 10 and new Windows 10 Enterprise offerings, and we hope to make this presentation today very interactive. So throughout our presentation this morning, we encourage you to interact with us by typing in questions and comments using the Q&A pane in the WebEx Event Center. We'll be answering questions live both during the event and after the presentation. We'll also leave plenty of time after our demo and presentation this morning for you to ask questions. We're also recording today's session, and we'll send a link to the recording after the event via email. Today on our panel, we have Tim Flight, Core BTS National Director, and Dan Christie, Solutions Architect for Core BTS. And at this time, I will pass it along to Tim to get us started.
Thank you, Anna. Do I sound okay?
Sounds good.
Great. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I appreciate your time to join us this morning. As Anna said, my name is Tim Flight. I work for Core BTS. I've been here about 11, 12 years now. I work out of one of our Pennsylvania locations. I also have Dan Christie in the session this morning. Dan is a member of my team. He works at one of our Wisconsin locations. My team here at Core BTS is essentially charged with managing our Microsoft partnership relations, as well as helping all of our clients handle technical architecture, design, and pre-sales needs around all things Microsoft that Core BTS is part of. Today's session, as you can tell, is going to be focused on Windows 10. Kind of the overarching goal of today's session, at least the way I have it right now, is to familiarize folks at a high level of Windows 10 that may have read about it, may understand some of the changes, but may have not seen it, as also to discuss the business aspect side of it, to explain reasons why it makes some sense to consider Windows 10 as your next move inside your corporate or business environments. We had a lot of clients that did not make a jump from Windows 7 to Windows 8. We had an enormous amount of clients that did not make a jump from Windows 7 to Windows 8. And we still run across a lot of clients and prospects that are running Windows XP and are still in the process of looking to get off of some of those end-of-life and support platforms. So Windows 10 has been released for a few months now, and it's an interesting platform. So as Anna mentioned, please feel free to ask questions, folks. I know it's not like quite the intimate experience where we're all sitting in a room and we can interact in real time, and I enjoy that a lot. But in this case, let's do the best to try to replicate that. So if you have any questions, please type them into the WebEx environment where you're able to do so. We will do our best to answer them real time. Dan's going to be monitoring the questions and keeping track of anything we might not be able to answer so we can follow up with you on those. And then we are going to switch from the slide deck into a demo of sorts and show a few features to you that can be shown at this point. Some of them enterprise-focused features, some of them not. And I'll explain the concept behind that as we go. We're not going to get super heavy into the PowerPoints. There's a few decks that I'm going to go through, a few slides we'll go through to give folks a high-level overview, and then we'll kind of move on from there. I would like this to be as interactive as possible. I don't want to drown anybody with slide decks. I know Windows 10 is a newer offering. It's interesting. There's a lot of questions. It can do all sorts of different things that none of the previous releases could do. So I'd like to see what people are interested in that regard. Also, right before I get started, one thing to point out is I obviously can't take a show of hands or talk to anybody in the crowd here, but I have been doing some sessions with clients, with other folks in person, and when I ask a question like, so how many folks are using Windows 10, you'll get a smattering of hands raised, and then you ask, how many folks know about different features, you'll get a smattering of hands. So what I don't know is how much everybody on the phone knows or does not know about Windows 10. So I may hit on some more basic features of Windows 10 that I think are compelling to end users and to corporate environments. And if you're already super familiar with that, I apologize, just bear with us and feel free to ask questions, and we'll get to some of the new enterprise-specific feature sets as well. And with that, let's go ahead and get moving along here. So Windows 10 investments for the business. So Windows 10 is obviously a global release from Microsoft. Microsoft intends that Windows 10 will essentially be their last large-scale desktop operating system release going forward. Their plan is that they'll release this, which they have, and they'll continue to make incremental improvements, performance enhancements, features, all sorts of additions as it continues to evolve, and that will be the platform going forward. And so instead of this massive uplift, tear out and reinvent the wheel every 3 to 5 years, you'll have an experience that continues to grow with you, and they continue to update. And they've gone out of their way to really give you a lot more functionality and granular control, especially in a corporate environment where you're going to be managing these systems through your Active Directory environments, through your System Center environments, and so forth. And let's just read through a few of these here. Protection against modern security threats. Microsoft really did step up the game in terms of ensuring that there's as many security-based features within the operating system itself as opposed to needing third-party products. There's hardware-based security and better malware protection. One thing you'll notice in Windows 10, there is an emphasis on security features that are more integrated with hardware that's become kind of standard within platforms. So kernel-based encryption methodologies and biometric authentication that relies on, the kind of cameras that are going to be built into laptops going forward and so forth. So what Microsoft is trying to do is provide more enhanced security features that leverage native equipment that's become kind of commonplace nowadays, and we'll elaborate on that as we go along. Secure corporate identity to protect against modern threats with things like Microsoft Passport and biometrics like I discussed, protection of your corporate data wherever the data happens to be, and they're referring to data protection across the universal platform that you get with this environment. Eliminating malware on your devices. Microsoft has a new feature called Device Guard, which I will explain as we move on past the slides. More secure per application connection for mobile workers. Manage for continuous innovation. Choose management solutions that work best for you, whether it's mobile device management, management through group policy, things like System Center. No longer having to wipe and replace deployment. So I was referring to previously dynamic provisioning, in-place upgrades, feature enhancements without having to start on a new operating system. Powering your business with universal applications. So Microsoft has an app store that exists across all the various Windows platforms. So the app store exists in the Windows 10 platform, exists on the Windows mobile phone platforms. It can exist in all of their tablets and so forth. You as corporate entities, folks, might be saying, hey, I don't want my end users to have an app store to be able to install applications, and you have complete control over that. So if you want to take advantage of universal apps and let folks leverage those, you can. If you want to develop your own universal applications where you can code on one platform and it'll work across, a whole myriad of device types, you can do that. If you want to completely remove folks' access to leverage the app store and things like that, you'll be able to do that in a corporate environment as well. Powering your business with universal apps is kind of what I just mentioned there. Keeping your devices secure and up to date with the latest technology, delivering Windows as a service, which is really the concept here. Being more productive. Obviously, corporate clients have interest in their end users being more productive and making more money and so forth. Windows 10 is a very familiar experience. It adapts to your device. It also adapts to your user. For those of you that have made the upgrade to Windows 10, you might have seen the little thing in the bottom right-hand corner for the last couple months. It's offered you a free upgrade if you're on a domain join kind of corporate asset. Windows 10 feels very familiar. It's very easy to get a handle on very quickly. There's not a lot of learning curve. In fact, frankly, I think it's easier than Windows 8 was, and I kind of think that's where they were going with it. Apps that can run on any Windows device, again, the universal applications, the best productivity experience across all the Windows devices. And here they're mentioning Office for Windows. Microsoft Office continues to become ubiquitous. They're releasing Office 2016 on, I believe it is September 22nd. Office 2016, again, will look and be the same across all the Microsoft platforms, whether it's, PCs, phones, tablets, et cetera, even Android, iOS, Mac. They actually released the most up-to-date version of Office for the Mac platform or Apple, OS X platform before they did their own platform. Modernizing your web experience, and we'll show you Microsoft Edge. You don't lose Internet Explorer. We have many clients that we work with, large corporations that have applications that still require certain versions of IE, still have certain Java requirements, still have certain, XYZ on and on, where you have to be able to offer them certain versions of platforms to be able to run whether it's electronic medical record systems or accounting systems or things like that, it's very common that your application vendors are going to be behind the curve when it comes to the current browser editions and things like that. So while Microsoft is offering some newer browsers with some very clean experiences designed to simplify that, the whole web experience and reduce your potential footprint for attack, you do not have to, walk away or give up on IE, whether you, even if you would like to. Innovative devices for your business, latest Windows innovations on your existing PC fleet. One thing I can say here, guys, we have started to help a few clients actually roll out Windows 10. So, we haven't worked with anybody beyond, a few hundred seats, and we're working with a few multi-thousand seat customers in the planning phases. We have come across next to no devices that will not run Windows 10. It's a platform that is not requiring any kind of extensive resources, any kind of extensive upgrades. I'm sure those of you that work in larger environments and in the IT for a long time remember many times of, running reports and walking around and upgrading memory in hundreds of computers or replacing computers that just flat out wouldn't run, things of that nature. If you have computers out there that are running Windows 7 today, and even some that are running Windows XP and so forth, they're likely going to run Windows 10. It's not a huge uplift in terms of performance requirements. Choosing the range of the innovative Windows devices, again, Microsoft's just pointing out the various different device types here. And redefining productivity with, what Microsoft's referring to revolutionary Windows devices. One thing to mention here, the HoloLens, a lot of people have probably seen, it's all over the internet, and it's a really interesting platform where people can walk around a room and have augmented reality and things like that, and it's really compelling. It's a little ways off, but it does have some definite business needs. They demonstrated at their most recent conference kind of an AutoCAD type model where an individual was walking around a room with a motorcycle, like without most of its parts installed onto it, and using the Microsoft holographics to add components and see what they look like physically in the room. Is really interesting. But that's a little ways off, and that's a little out of subject here. However, the Microsoft Surface Hub is something that Microsoft will be releasing in the not-too-distant future, and is a really compelling, extremely cost-affordable, a room-based system where you put this thing up on the wall. They have like 50 and 60-inch variants, and it's essentially a Windows 10 machine, all touch. And it's very compelling. You can, kind of drag and swipe things from your PC right up to the wall, add annotation, integration with Skype for Business, and all sorts of different feature sets. So Microsoft is getting a lot more innovative on some of the non-traditional platforms. All of which, and again, we're Windows 10 focused here. The reason that it's being brought up, it's all powered by Windows 10, and all exists on top of that platform. So the concept of delivering Windows as a service, as I mentioned before, many consumers today, they expect their devices to receive ongoing feature updates without having to take action. However, Microsoft understands in a business requirement and business environments that might not be the case. That might not be what you want all the time. So in the past, you've had ways to manage your Windows updates. You could use WSUS. You could use Microsoft, System Center Configuration Manager on top of WSUS to give you a little more granular control over how and when those updates are pushed. However, ultimately, you kind of were in a position where eventually you have to push the updates, or else the machine could become a threat. It could, not have the updates it needs to be secure and so forth. So in the ongoing stages of Windows 10 and the enterprise environment, Microsoft is adding additional functionality to give you more granular control. So if you have a subset of users where you need to create them a machine and you need to ensure that, listen, they cannot get Windows updates. They cannot get patches that I haven't tested to the nth degree. They can't get patches at all. And Microsoft gives some examples of, just mission-critical systems, air traffic controllers, systems connected to medical devices. We work with a lot of hospitals at Core BTS, and a lot of hospitals have imaging systems, connected to MRI devices and CAT scanners and things like these that are mission-critical, and they just can't be modified in any measurable way without, extensive testing and so forth. So Microsoft has introduced something called the long-term service branches. And what this does, it gives you the ability to have more extended time intervals and control over what you update and when. And long story short here, you're going to have a lot more control over how the update process is handled as opposed to what you had in the past. And you had it's a decent amount of granular control in the past, but it's been taken to a whole nother level here. So as they mentioned here, updates via Windows Update as they arrive. business users updates features after they're validated in the market. So they're referring to the fact that you can have more control over the update process. And then they mention examples of special systems, air traffic control, emergency rooms, things of that nature. Let's move on. This slide talks a little bit about, and I promise folks we'll get through the slides fairly quickly. There's about 10 of them total. This slide discusses the customer journey and how Microsoft, sees things going forward, referring to the ongoing engineering and development, the Windows Insider preview branches. So one thing to mention here, guys, if you heard about the lead up to Windows 10 and the Windows Insider process, Microsoft, did extensive testing through the Windows Insider program, which is something that, I signed up and a lot of people in the IT environment signed up for, where you could test the process, test Windows 10 ahead of time while they were developing it. Every couple of days or every couple of weeks they would roll out new beta versions with different tech builds and so forth, and add new features and pull out features that didn't work and make adjustments. And they did that for, a long time leading up to Windows 10. And what it did was it allowed the final product to be really refined, and it had a ton of feedback in it from the actual end users and people that are going to have to manage this system and run with these systems. What Microsoft has decided to do is to continue that. They're going to essentially maintain the Insider program going forward, since essentially what they're going to do is Windows 10 is going to be desktop as a service. They're going to continue to update and iterate on the platform, add new feature sets, add new security programs or security methodologies and so forth to Windows 10, as I mentioned earlier. And in order to ensure that those features that they're going to continue to add don't, get created in a bubble, they're also going to continue the Insider preview program, which I think is really interesting. So you can continue to be an insider and help test out and provide feedback and give suggestions on Windows 10 as long as you want, because it's going to continue to be an evolutionary, platform. So then it moves on to the current branch. They talk up here about the current branch for business, and then the long-term service branch. And the long-term service branch model is what I refer to around having certain device types that you're going to support extensively in the way that they came out, so that way you're not modifying them for systems that don't adapt quickly. So again, hospital environments, things like that, the application vendors that do not keep up with updates and things of that nature, where you need to have a secure machine. However, you need to not necessarily push all updates to it all the time. All right. So we'll talk briefly here about the Windows 10 desktop editions. So you have obviously home, it's targeted at consumers and bring your own devices and so forth. Then you have Pro, Windows Pro. It's targeted at small, lower, and mid-sized business organizations. And then you have Enterprise. So I'm sure our audience here today is a diverse audience, some small to medium-sized business organizations. We likely have some enterprise folks on the phone here. So if you're traditionally purchasing from Microsoft through a sizable Microsoft Select or Enterprise agreement, you likely are going to be targeting the Enterprise versions of the operating systems. The difference between Pro and Enterprise is not substantial. You'll buy through volume licensing in the Enterprise model as opposed to OEM or open-based licensing in the Pro. The only real difference between Pro and Enterprise right now that is measurable is that long-term servicing branch option I mentioned before, where you can essentially stop updates, but Microsoft will ensure secure footprint on, those long-term service branch models. And then the MDOP, which is an optimization tool set that comes with the Enterprise, and that applies to more than just Windows and so forth. But again, on the top of it, guys, up at the home, consumer, bring your own device, it's free, right? So one thing to point out is if you own a Windows 7 or a Windows 8.1 device, for the first year after Microsoft released Windows 10, it's completely free. So, even in some of our smaller clients that we help, 5, 10, Core BTS guys, we're a very diverse partner. We, are Microsoft Gold partners, and we have many competencies, and we help, 7, 10, 15,000 seat organizations, but that doesn't mean we don't help smaller organizations as well. So we still have some, small 10, 20, 50 seat customers we help here and there, and we have a lot of mid-market business customers, in the 250 to 2,500 seat organizations. So, there may be a subset of users out there that have purchased retail. So if if you're a 50-user business and you've 2 or 3 years ago made a big retail purchase of Windows machines from HP or Dell or something like that, and they all came with Windows 7 on them, and they have OEMs or home editions and so forth, you're likely entitled to free versions of Windows 10. You can get them for up to a year. And it's the kind of thing where, a company like Core BTS, Microsoft partner, would love to help you understand that and help you take advantage of that. So even if you're a smaller organization, don't overlook the fact that you likely have entitlements as well. If you're in an enterprise agreement or a select agreement and you have software assurance in any of the larger situations here on your, SA on your desktop environments, then you already have entitlements to Windows 10 as well. If you have no existing purchasing model and you have no device types that are entitled to free Windows 10, then there's the similar purchasing models, via OEM buying it with a device or retail boxes and so forth. So even if you have Pro Edition, you get a free upgrade as well. So the one thing is to take advantage of that while the iron's hot. If you're in an enterprise, you're going to have entitlements no matter what in an enterprise model, assuming you have software assurance. If you're in any of those other situations, which, we have some large customers that, have bought retail and never done enterprise agreements, and they may even be in a situation where they own Pro licensing and they can get the free upgrades for the first year, please reach out to us. Myself and my team here at Core BTS, our job is to help you understand, where your business is at and how we can map you to the Microsoft product lifecycle and how we can, help your business take advantage of those products. So you might have an opportunity for the next few months to take advantage of a completely free upgrade from a licensing perspective, and my team is, I guess, the easy way to put it is we're the free guys here. We're the architects. We'd like to come out, we'll sit down and review your environment with you and help you do planning and design and go forth, and then we have a large, very talented delivery team to come in and actually help you implement that. But don't miss the opportunity, folks. We're glad to help you go through that and help you understand your entitlements and what makes sense for your organization. Let's move along. So I may have kind of hit most of this, and we don't have to spend much time on this, but Windows 10 Enterprise with software assurance. So again, if you license through something like an enterprise agreement with Microsoft or a structured select agreement, you may have a software assurance on your desktop operating systems, which gives you all sorts of entitlements. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this here, but if you see what's now included with software assurance here, they're mentioning there's some additional things like, AppB and UEV, BitLocker monitoring, which is actually an interesting tool, the remote diagnostic recovery tool set. A lot of these features in that second slide there are very much focused on the enterprise space. In my opinion, probably, 2,500, 3,000 seat higher kind of organizations. Because some of those, there's a lot of work to roll them out, and they have a lot of benefit, but they're definitely, more advanced product sets. So if you look on the left, there's enterprise exclusive features, and these are things that you're going to get as an enterprise customer that you wouldn't get in the Pro or the home consumer. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the other versions. It's just that Microsoft, obviously, since you're paying a large sum of money for the enterprise agreements and those feature sets, they offer you some additional functionality. So things like branch cache, app locker, device guard, and so forth. Are some of those new features. And if anybody has specific questions about those, we're not going to be able to hit on every one of them today, but I'd be glad to talk about them at length if one of these particular features is of interest to you. Give us a note, give us a call afterwards, and we can follow up with that for sure. All right, let's move on. And again, licensing is boring, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but Microsoft, obviously takes some time to point this out. So they're just, again, referring to the power of the SA per user. So what they're getting at is they're trying to emphasize the benefits of having a software assurance model, or essentially covering your environment through an enterprise agreement with software insurance. So this slide here kind of shows that off. The traditional model is different now in the new model. In the new model, you don't have limits on devices anymore per user. Their primary devices in the past, have required Windows Pro. That's no longer necessarily the case. Local installs, they changed up a little bit, so you can use really any of the Windows versions, and it can also be a tablet, which was not an option in the past license-wise. VDI licensing. So if anybody's doing desktop virtualization through something like Citrix and Desktop, you have to buy from Microsoft something called a VDA licensing to be able to legally do VDI. That's always come with software assurance, but now they're making it available for any device type as opposed to a single desktop type device. It's really an entitlement. That actually did reduce a large cost, and we don't need to get into it. I can explain that to anybody that wants to talk about it. Again, Microsoft licensing is interesting, and it's confusing, and they have an entire 2-week class you can take on learning how to understand their licensing. So we're not going to get too in-depth in it here, but understand that there's a multitude of licensing purchasing models based upon your size and who you are. Obviously, Microsoft's shifting many things to the cloud, folks. Core BTS is in the middle of probably 50 active Microsoft projects right now, with 30-some engineers, and the vast majority of them are helping clients leverage Microsoft's cloud-based technologies, things like Office 365 and Azure, and things of that nature. And Windows 10 is just a new platform that really integrates tightly with those feature sets. So there's all sorts of ways to buy Windows 10, to buy all the different Microsoft products, and a lot of them are moving towards an operational monthly expense kind of model as opposed to the traditional large base capital expenditure model. So we would be glad, and I'd be glad to sit down and review all the different licensing types and options with you and help you out with that. We're not a Microsoft enterprise reseller, so we're a partner. We do all the deployment work. We can sell you licensing in the mid-market and small, medium business space, but when you look into an enterprise model, or the enterprise licensing, we can help you understand it all and help you point you in the right direction. And Microsoft has a small subset of what they call LSPs that can actually sell that product set. So I want to stop talking about Microsoft licensing because I can't see anybody on the screen, but I'm boring myself, so I assume you guys are getting bored with it. So let's move on. Desktop feature placemats. So this is kind of a real quick what you get with the different versions. This is obviously not all-inclusive, folks, and they focus on some of the newer different things. Let's hit this real quick, and then we can kind of move along and out of the slide deck because I think we're done with that. Existing differentiated features. So domain joining and group policy management, this has always been the case, guys, but in order to join your machine to a Microsoft Active Directory domain, you need Windows Pro or Enterprise, and then that gives you the ability to apply group policy, have all the granular controls, and things of that nature, manage it with System Center and so forth. And Home still has many of the Windows 10 feature sets. You just can't control it with the corporate or the enterprise-based feature sets from Windows Server. One thing to point out, guys, is that Windows Server 2016 is coming likely early next year, and a lot of the net new group policy objects and really powerful control sets are going to come with that. When you combine Windows Server 2016 and Windows 10, you're going to get an even better experience. You do not need to wait for that. There's still a ton of feature sets. If you're running Windows Server 2012 or 2008 Active Directory, you can join Windows 10 machines, and there's some group policy sets you can apply to that to get some of those enabled right away. But a lot of things are going to even kind of turn the corner, and you're going to get a lot more granular control with Server 2016, as well as we're expecting a similar update to the Microsoft System Center product set that's going to add a whole lot of Windows 10 specific integration points. And again, this continues to talk about, if you look at security, you get the enterprise data protection in Pro and Enterprise. You get Credential Guard and Device Guard in Enterprise only, and you get Passport in all the feature sets. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this at this point. So if anybody has a lot of questions or any questions, even one question about, do I get this with this version? And hey, I have this version now. What am I entitled to do? I have a machine I bought 2 years ago. It's running Windows 7. I think I'm entitled. I'm not sure. Please let us know. My contact information will be available, and I have a team of folks that would love to help you out with that kind of stuff. And again, that's not something we're going to charge anybody for. My team wants to help our clients and prospects understand what they can do and how they can best take advantage of what's out there for them. And then hopefully you'll see the value in that, and you can have our delivery team help you guys out with any more sizable engagements. So what I want to do, folks, now is I want to kind of stop discussing the slides here, and what I'm going to do is just take it back to the first slide for a second. And I want to list a couple things that I think are interesting and I think are compelling. So a pretty frequent question I get from folks, and this was even more prevalent before. So Windows XP, guys, obviously was everywhere for a long time. You know, and people tend to forget, and people have short memories, but, you know, when Windows XP first came out, it had its own problems, right? It had all sorts of issues that slowly got resolved. For some reason, it was named the same thing as, as AMD's processors. You know, I still remember people trying to understand, do I need an AMD Athlon XP to run Windows XP? And, you know, think about how long ago that was. But what happened was Windows XP got refined and refined and refined to the point where it was very solid, very stable. So for a long time, we would have conversations with clients, you know, both big and small and very big, and they would say, listen, it works. Why should I update? Why should I move to Windows 7? You know, why should I, rock the boat here? We're now in a situation where we're having discussions with customers that are running Windows 7 or, some Windows 8, but largely Windows 7. And there's some very compelling reasons to go to Windows 10. However, it's the same discussions that come up. Like, okay, why? You know, what's different in Windows 10 that I should consider taking the time to do this upgrade? Even if you're in a situation where the desktop licensing itself is completely free to your organization, whether it's enterprise entitlements or whether it's part of the, the 1-year free upgrade for just about everybody else, the question still is why? Why should I take the time, the effort, the money, the end user, changes and learning curve to implement that? So I'd like to hit on a couple things in Windows 10 that I think are compelling. You may or may not think they're compelling, and you're obviously free to do so. And I'm talking about some stuff that's coming. Reasons, it's pretty common that if I'm not sure my audience exactly, but if you're in the IT department at various companies, you're probably interested in this stuff. You're probably saying, you know what, I've heard a lot, or I've started using it. I know Windows 10 is really interesting. I'd love to advocate to my management that we should, initiate a project and talk about rolling out Windows 10. And I want to give you some ideas of things that I think are of value and could compel people to want to do that and help you, send that message up the stairs and help you help you get there, help you convince folks to, put a project in to do this. And obviously, guys, we're going to hit a couple things here, but this is what we do as an organization. As a follow-up, I'd love to come out and sit down with your organization and whiteboard kind of where you're at now, whiteboard the Microsoft product lifecycle, both Windows 10. Oh, I just got Cortana going on me. Obviously, whiteboard the Windows 10 product lifecycle, as well as the complementary products, whether it's Windows Server, Microsoft Office, Microsoft System Center, all the different components that can interact with Windows 10. If we can compare, the Microsoft lifecycle of those products to your current system and your lifecycle where you're at, and talk about where you're at and where Microsoft's at and where together you guys can go, and highlight some of the feature sets and benefits to your organization, that's usually a really nice exercise to help you cost justify and sell the initiative, to the folks you need to sell that to within your organization. So one thing to highlight here, and I'm going to share my desktop in a second, but Windows 10 is going to enable easier end-user adoption. And in my opinion, the really easiest thing to say is that it's going to, end-user adoption is going to be easier just because of the similarities alone. Windows 10 is so similar in use type and function to Windows 7, and Windows 7 has been so widely adopted and at this point it is so heavily appreciated by end users, and they're very familiar with it. And even users using Windows XP, frankly, there's not going to be a huge difference between that and Windows 10. The learning curve is very short. I work at a sales organization. We have a very large technical side of our organization full of both, engineers, architects, and things of that nature, and they all jumped all over it, and they had no issues, and I didn't expect them to. But we also have a large subset of sales folks, a lot of people that are always on the road, they're running around, they don't really care about their computer aside from that it works. And believe it or not, the vast majority of our sales team, jumped on top of it, upgraded it, was really interested in it, took time to grab people within our organization to show them what they can do with it and new feature sets and so forth. So I didn't see that before. We didn't see that with Windows 8 or Windows 7. We didn't see that kind of just all-around interest. So that's just one thing to begin with, is that, there's a lot of end users that want it. They want to be exposed to it. I assume at this point everybody's heard about Cortana. Cortana is the voice assistant that's built into Windows 10. And let me go ahead and see if I can share my desktop here at this point. Anna, can you guys see my desktop? I'll open something here.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
And Tim, this might be a good time for us to answer just a couple of questions that have come in
Sure.
before we kick off the demo. So Dan's answered some of them. And then we've got a couple that are a little bit more specific to specific use cases that Dan and Tim and myself will make sure we get followed up with after the event here. But we do have a couple of just larger questions in general about Windows 10 that I think would be good for us to answer right now.
Sure.
So we have one question just about privacy with Windows 10. So somebody had mentioned that they were reading the privacy statement and that there was something about Microsoft collecting some information, and wondering if you could shed some light on that.
Yeah, and I can shed light onto what I know. You know, everybody's read similar articles. There was obviously Windows 10 is newer, so you have all sorts of groups doing in-depth evaluations of different products. And there was an article where a group determined that it seemed that even when you know, within the operating system itself, you can check settings that says do not share with Microsoft, do not share with third parties, any kind of information about yourself or settings you have within the environment. The same thing happens all the time, guys. When you set up a Google account or a Yahoo account or anything anywhere, there's always a checkbox somewhere that says, you know, yes, I would like to share my information or not. Often that information sharing is kind of metadata, so it's just, you know, not necessarily like your name or who you are. It's just kind of, you know, what you do and how that fits in the bigger scheme of things. The article was focused around, was focused around the fact that they seemed to find that even when that was disabled, that some information was still being sent out to Microsoft. We work with Microsoft all the time. I was in their office 2 days ago, just, you know, meeting with them, and we meet with them weekly. That was a topic of discussion. Obviously, Microsoft is on top of it from a PR perspective. Microsoft is following up with it, and what the statement Microsoft has given is that when you select the buttons or configure that policy through group policy, it will not share any data outside the organization, metadata or otherwise, and they're trying to determine if there is potentially an issue where something is still happening and something is still being shared. And what I'm told is that, you know, there'll be an update soon, both an informational update as well as if they determine there's any actual issue with it, it will be fixed and patched. They're having, apparently there's 3 or 4 updates pushed into the technical preview. As I mentioned, the Insider program continues to run, so they're continuing to evolve the operating system and test things. So I guess I don't have a definitive answer for you, but I can tell you this. What I've been told is that if Microsoft determines that, you know, the bug or whatever that was found that was possibly releasing information is there, that, you know, their intention is to fix it, and they will document it and you know, inform everybody when that comes out. And again, we work very tightly with Microsoft folks, and if you're an organization where you're considering Windows 10 and you have concerns about something along that or any other thing, I can always arrange a meeting where we can help you out, and I can get Microsoft representatives themselves on the phone to speak to you about those specific aspects. So that's what I know about that right now. I do know specifically what you're referring to in the question, and what I just told you is what I know in terms of an answer, that if there is an issue or there's a bug that's causing that setting to not fully stop the computer from trying to transmit information, that it will be fixed.
Great, thanks. And just a couple of quick ones here. Somebody's wondering if you can run Sysprep on Windows 10 currently. So
there is a patch for Windows System Center Configuration Manager, which is the more common application nowadays from Microsoft that is leveraged for imaging, system deployment, things of that nature. As well, it's a good question. Dan, can you make a note? I do not know if, I do know for a fact that, the reason I brought up System Center is because we've tested in the lab and we have a customer we're working with. When you package an application, or I'm sorry, when you package an operating system in System Center for deployment, you know, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, you then run you kind of tell Windows System Center, you tell Configuration Manager, hey, I have the desktop image kind of the way I don't like it. It will then go ingest that image and do Sysprep-like functionality where it'll strip out, you know, the pertinent information, and it'll force the reset up to run when you push it. You know, it'll force it to, you know, the user put in their name and pick a machine name, and, you know, typical stuff that's cleared with Sysprep. So you can do it using System Center after you apply a patch to Configuration Manager. I do not know off the top of my head if the Sysprep standalone tool has been revved to support Windows 10, but Dan, if you'll make a note, and if whomever asked that question, Anna, get their contact info, and I will reach out within the next day or two and get you an answer on that.
Perfect.
I would assume,
yeah, and with any
I would assume it will be, considering they've already provided a patch. It's not the full update to System Center yet or Config Manager yet, but they applied a patch just so that can work. So I got to assume it's going to eventually if it's not already. But I will get you an answer.
Yeah, just one last question here that has come up multiple times. We will address everybody's else's specific questions either after our demo or offline if they're a little bit more specific to your use case here. But we did have a couple of people asking and maybe a little bit concerned about the fact that updates in Pro versions are forced through, and wondering if you could maybe explain that a little bit further and what the intention behind that was.
You mean, did the question talk about the difference between the fact that I was mentioning how you have more granular control in the enterprise? Is that what can you read me the question specific, or what was it?
Yeah, so they said, did I hear that on Pro versions you cannot control when or if updates are forced through?
No, that's not the case at all. And if that's how it came across, I apologize. And just to clarify, it's a little confusing. It's in the enterprise version of Windows 10, and I'm specifically talking about the version of the software, not like, you know, if you happen to be a big company or not. In the Windows 10 Enterprise Edition, you now have a feature called long-term servicing branch. And what that means is that Microsoft, at different periods of time, will essentially stamp the Windows 10 product and say, okay, as of the day we stamp this, this is a new LTSB. This is a new long-term servicing branch version of Windows 10. And what that means is that as time goes on, for example, you know, Microsoft, you know, 2 or 3 years from now, they may have revved Windows 10 50 times, and they might say, hey, if you're not running, you know, at least the patches and the updates from the last 6 months or something, you know, that's not going to be supported until you allow it to become up to date. The long-term servicing branch it's going to be a situation where Microsoft is going to stamp different existences or different states of time for Windows 10 and say, all right, we guarantee to continue to support this how it is for a long period of time, 3, 5, 7 years. There's different clarifications. And the reason why that's coming out, guys, is if you can imagine, it's very common in certain situations where application vendors just don't update things, or they just can't update things. So in a healthcare environment, for example, say GE has a piece of software that controls a very complicated MRI scanner. They go ahead and they build their software. They get it working on an operating system the way it is that day. They have to go to the government, and the government has to review that, confirm it works, and confirm it works exactly the way it should, the way everything is, right? So even if the next day you put a Windows update or a patch on that machine, it's no longer considered a validated platform. So what Microsoft's trying to do to help deal with those situations, and they come up a lot in manufacturing, in aerospace, in healthcare, especially in healthcare where they do drug trials and medicines and hospitals. So by Microsoft creating that long-term servicing branch, they're going to stamp different editions, edition's not the right word, but stamp different periods of time, and that way these vendors can then create their application, certify that it works with that long-term service branch of the Windows 10 operating system state, and then they can take their time, and they might not have to certify it for the next LTSB for several years. So that way you as a customer can say, okay, here's a machine, and I've got it running the LTSB of last April from Microsoft, and the application vendor guarantees it's going to work with that LTSB, and then boom, you're good to go. And Microsoft will ensure that that LTSB is supported and can be maintained secure. So that LTSB does not exist in Pro. It only exists, that LTSB option only exists in Enterprise. But outside of that, guys, you absolutely, if you own a Windows Pro Edition and you are controlling it through WSUS, through Microsoft System Center, you have as much granular control of when you push updates and when you don't, and what you push and what you don't, as you do in Enterprise. So I apologize if there's any confusion there, but that's what I was getting at from there.
Great. Thanks, Tim. I think we're ready to hop into the demo.
Okay. So, guys, again, what I want to do here is, and the demo is what it is. I'll do my best. The one thing I'm not sure if I can do is get the sound to come across, because WebEx doesn't really support sound, but I might try and turn on my speakers here. So I was starting to mention Cortana. So Cortana is the Microsoft self-service assistant that you can speak to. And, initially I think some people think that kind of stuff is gimmicky, but you know what, Siri and talking to your Android device has been around for a while, and a lot of people are very used to that. If you think about that, and I'm 36 years old, I consider myself old. But, a lot of the younger folks, the folks that are coming into companies nowadays are very, very adept with mobile devices, with voice technology, with, that kind of request. So Cortana is actually very compelling because it integrates so tightly with just about everything, right? So, if I'm a corporate user, I'm sitting at my desk, in my situation, guys, I work for Core, I have an office, but I'm on the road a lot, I work from home a lot. Cortana is tightly integrated with, and if you can see, Cortana thinks I'm talking to her. It can be integrated with just about anything, right? So I can be sitting here at my computer and I can say, hey, Cortana, what do I have today? So it's talking as well. So it's talking and it brings up your events and I can see this. Now, one thing to point out, guys, is this information that Cortana is getting, it is getting this information from my Microsoft Exchange calendar. My Microsoft Exchange environment happens to be Office 365. I don't, as you notice here, I do not have Outlook open. I do not have any open connection to, my corporate, email environment. However, you can configure Cortana to be able to see the pertinent information it needs to see as well as to be able to update it. So let me see real quick if I can maybe let you guys hear the sound. I'm not sure how great it's going to go, but we're going to try. I'm going to have to just turn it up a little bit. Hey, Cortana, what do I have today?
I found 10 events today. Here they are.
So I'm not sure if folks can hear that because I'm talking on a headset and then I have speakers sitting over next to me. But Cortana does talk to you. She's pretty useful. So that's just one example. You can really quick pull up your calendar. You can also do things like, hey, Cortana, add a meeting today at 3 o'clock to get lunch.
What time does it start?
Yeah, there. So I don't know, it didn't quite catch the time, but it should. You can be very granular. Hey, Cortana. Hey, Cortana. Schedule a meeting today at 3 p.m. to get lunch.
I can add lunch to your calendar for today at 3 p.m. Sounds good?
Yes.
Great.
So this is just a super simple example, guys, and this is Cortana integrating with my corporate email environment, my corporate infrastructure, and I don't even have to have Outlook open. You certainly could have Outlook open if you wanted to. And this kind of goes on and on. So there's all sorts of things you can do in here. And a lot of people say, oh, that's kind of gimmicky, but I can guarantee you we're working with various clients that are interested in this where we're using it internally. It becomes extremely powerful to be able to just say something and have it happen, to have it remind you, So when I'm sitting here, and I'm sure this happens to everybody in a corporate world, you're sitting here typing, you might be on a webinar, you might be doing something else, and you get an email or a text saying, hey, I really need you to do this, do that, and it's so easy to be like, hey, Cortana, remind me at 2 o'clock that I have to get that TPS report done.
Remind you to get that CDSE at 2 p.m. today.
Not exactly, but
all right?
No.
So do you want to change the reminder, date, or time?
And I'll just start it over. But that's the gist of it. And what I'm finding, guys, is that it goes on and on. The integration seems to continue to go, and Microsoft is like almost daily putting out updates where it can be integrated tighter and tighter. So Office 2016 is coming in the 22nd. There's going to be even more integration in there. But there's almost anything you can have it do. You can have it show your schedule. You can have it show the About Me. You can have it just launch applications. You can, hey, Cortana. Hey, Cortana. Launch Outlook.
Sure. Opening Microsoft Outlook 2000.
So you can have it, have it launch Outlook. You can have it do, launch anything for that matter. I'm not going to go ahead and sign in here because I'm going to have a lot of email that people want me to do stuff. So Cortana integration is something that, obviously Microsoft shows off in commercials. They pitch in their phone devices, but it has a place in a corporate environment. And I only really breached the surface there, guys. You can have Cortana cancel meetings. You can have Cortana send emails. You can say tell Cortana, hey, if you're driving or you can just say, hey, Cortana, cancel my 3 o'clock meeting and email attendees. And it'll cancel the meeting, and it'll email the attendees for you. It'll tell them that. you can even schedule meetings and pick attendees to add. There's really not a whole lot that you can't do with it. The integration points continue to get tighter and tighter. You can launch apps with voice commands, scheduling email, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The one reason I really want to hit on this, guys, is that this is a really neat feature. It's something that's compelling for end users, and it's again, it's just another thing you can leverage for why. You know, why should I go to Windows 7, go from Windows 7 to Windows 10? You know, what kind of feature sets are useful there? And just the fact that it can be integrated, and again, if you're in a corporate or an enterprise environment, you have complete control over whether people can or can't do this, but I have Cortana fully integrated into my corporate, you know, existence, right? So it has access to my corporate calendars and things of that nature. So, any questions? Anna, do we have any questions, or did anybody ask any particular questions about Cortana that I can hit on?
Just one quick question about Cortana here. Someone's wondering if Cortana works while you are actively using another program, or does it have to be the active window?
Nope, you can be using, I can have 1,000 things open. So like if I have this open and I open multiple browsers and I go all over the place, I can still say, hey, Cortana, can you find me all the PowerPoint documents on my computer? So boom, there you go. I mean, that's pretty nice, right? I'm sitting here, I can have 5 other applications open, and Cortana can help me find documents. You could even say, tell Cortana to, and I'm trying to be quiet because, the more you say her name, the more she wants to talk to you. You can have it search for specific documents. I said, find me all my PowerPoint documents, and it found all my PowerPoint documents, and it also suggested, do I want to search the web? Do I want to look out on OneDrive? Things like that. You can say, ask for specific document names, types, things like that. I don't know about you guys, but I can't tell you how many times I'm spent searching through email or typing in search things to find documents. Just have Cortana do stuff like that for you. And the list really goes on and on, guys. You can come in here and you can configure settings and tell Cortana she should suggest ideas to you and how she should respond best. You can tell her to call you a different name or, call you whatever you want her to call you. You can add finance. This is interesting. So if if you have stocks that you care about, you can tell it to track different stocks. It really goes on and on. Hey, Cortana, how is Microsoft stock doing?
Microsoft, 0.39%.
So you can pretty much ask them to show you, she'll go out and search the internet for just about anything. But if you go in here and configure things ahead of time, so like I told it ahead of time that I care specifically about this stock, it'll always have that up to date. So instead of having to go search and find it, it kind of has it quicker and things like that. And you can do, you really can take it to the nth degree in here and all sorts of things. And I know that there's a lot in here that you wouldn't consider corporate or enterprise focused, but there's some stuff in here that's compelling to end users. There's probably not a lot of harm in letting end users leverage it for different things. But again, in a corporate environment, if you don't want to, you can restrict what it can and can't do. And there's a lot of things that are very useful in a corporate environment. Just the really tight integration with Exchange or Office 365 and things like that can really empower the tool set.
Tim, we have another question coming in. Somebody asked, what would be the one feature that would be an improvement over Windows 7 for business use outside of Cortana?
Sure, and there's a whole bunch of them, guys. Microsoft will talk about that, and they'll highlight the universal applications. So there's one thing where you can develop an application on the Microsoft 10 API platform that will run in Windows 10, just like any other Windows application. That same application will then run on, other Windows devices, tablets, phones, et cetera, things of that nature. So there's, they refer to it the universal application. Windows 10 has focused heavily on the advancement of security features. So, for example, if I can show you how, I can show you how you set it up, but you can configure biometric options for identity. So if you can go in here and you can, let's go back to settings, accounts, sign-in options. So you can actually use a fingerprint scanner. So if I had a fingerprint scanner, I could plug it into any Windows 10 device out of the box, doesn't need any drivers or anything like that. And once you plug it in, this screen will pop up and say, okay, let's do the process, let's program a fingerprint reader, and then you can authenticate. But you can also do things like picture passwords, where you can come in here and draw different patterns, and they require them to be sufficiently complex to have alternative methods of authentication and sign-in. And then you can also require second factor just out of here. You can say you need a password and a PIN that people have to create. And people can create the PIN themselves. You can force the use of a PIN through group policy. They also support out of the box biometric facial identification. So there's a newer flavor of cameras called RealSense cameras that are starting to be put into all the new business laptops, and you can buy them over the counter. And what they do is they're cameras that work like a regular camera, but they have additional feature sets where they can work in complete darkness. And when you look at them, they identify all sorts of facial points, and they draw essentially inside the system. They develop a pattern of your face. So to authenticate, you can open your laptop or your PC and stare right at it. It'll tell you to stare at this and recognize your face. And it can recognize your face, and then you could, through policy, say, okay, that's enough to sign you in. Or you can say, you need to recognize the guy's face, and he needs a fingerprint, and he needs a password and a PIN, or any combination of those. So Windows 10 has some specific features added to it around biometric and advanced security authentication methods over Windows 7. There's a product called Device Guard, which will allow companies within the organization to restrict devices to running only trusted applications. And what this is, for example, if you're in a highly regulated environment, or even if you're not, and you're just in an environment where you want to make sure you have very granular control over what people can and cannot run, Device Guard with Windows 10 will actually allow you to create essentially a pattern for applications that you say are allowed to run. It's not based off the name of them. It's not based off any easily modifiable setting where a user could rename, the executable to make other things run. It's more in depth, much more in depth than the previous options in Windows 7 and Windows 2008 or 12 group policy, and it leverages kernel-level verifications. It takes advantage of the hardware signing in combination of the application sets that you guys want to enforce. And really, what that means is you can forcibly tell a Windows 10 device within your corporate environment that they can only run, whatever you have. So you have 5 applications. That's the only thing we want to be able to run. They can only be run on a corporate device, and that only that application can run, and there's no way to fake that application to make the device think it's running that application when it's not, because it uses a combination of the application itself, a signature it creates, and hardware-based kernel verification, and to ensure things like that. So that's called Device Guard, and I could explain that in more depth, but that's a Windows 10 specific feature. As I mentioned earlier, all those additional granular feature sets around the Windows updates and so forth, that's all Windows 10 specific. Windows 10 specific feature set. There's some data enhanced protection, some data protection options that are put in place on Windows 10 around restricting files from being accessed from trusted and non-trusted machines. So if you take a look, you still have traditional encryption options, right? So you can go into files and you can choose to, encrypt the data, right? And so forth. When you integrate Windows 10 with Windows, with the newer versions of Active Directory, you can take these encryption methods to a whole nother level. So, I was able to really quickly encrypt the file right now. So if I copy this file onto any other machine that doesn't have my encryption key, you wouldn't be able to open it. They have that feature set, and taken it above and above and above. There's all sorts of different granular controls around that. With Windows 10 integrated with the enterprise management products from Microsoft that are focused on Windows 10. So I think some of the security features are really compelling to an enterprise corporate environment. The built-in native biometric feature sets, the fact that once you make a move to Windows 10, you're never going to do a rip and replace all around upgrade again, as it's going to be kind of desktop as a service. Microsoft is going to continue to evolve the platform. These are just some of the features, folks. I obviously don't have time to hit on all of these, but a lot of them are really compelling. Just the fact that you can do facial recognition out of the box with an operating system is pretty amazing. And there's a whole lot of additional feature sets above and beyond that that really are compelling in the platform. So at this point, we're coming up, it's pretty much 12 o'clock, or after 12 o'clock. Anna, is there any questions that we haven't answered that you think we could get to at this point, or any demo requests that we could get to at this point that I could try?
I don't have anything specific right now. Maybe we'll give people a minute or two to chime in. A couple people have some more specific use case questions. Again, we'll follow up with you offline over email. But otherwise, at this time, Tim, there's still quite a few people on the line. If you want to take, an extra 5 minutes or so, I think that would be okay.
Sure. I mean, and I guess let's talk a little bit about some of the other newer feature sets. I mentioned the native biometric base authentication, and that is around facial recognition. It's also natively supports pretty much any kind of fingerprint scanner you can buy. Many laptops and things like that come with fingerprint scanners and have for a while, but they've required you to install whatever, an HP piece of software, an IBM piece of software. That's no longer necessary. It's integrated into the operating system itself, and then you have access to control that through group policy, through the management tools that Microsoft provides, as opposed to it really, the previous versions were biometric things were literally just a client-side thing only for the most part, unless you went out and bought an expensive third-party solution. There is native zero-day attack prevention built into Windows 10. So Microsoft has added a feature where they have given the operating system the ability to recognize patterns that they will update through, the continuing update process, and the native security features built into Windows 10 have been advanced over Windows 7 and Windows 8 to recognize heuristic patterns and threats that may not necessarily exist within the definitions, right? Because the way antivirus and things like that typically work is, you have your machines update daily or multiple times a day with the patterns from the vendors, Microsoft included. However, they've now added some feature sets that give the operating system the ability to try to recognize what they think might be malicious patterns and suggest that you may not want to, open that file or take advantage of whatever that program is or whatnot inside the system. Microsoft also has a new feature in Windows 10 called, Passport, which is kind of a redone version of a product they used to have in the past that allows you to kind of vault passwords and leverage them for single sign-on if you want to do that. And that can be single sign-on on, really anything. It's not a Microsoft-specific application, but it's a Microsoft feature that gives you the ability to vault passwords and keep them inside this passport. And again, that is another feature that you can turn on, turn off, or have granular control over from a corporate administrative perspective if you're talking about, end-user computers inside of a corporate environment and so forth.
Tim, we did have one request come in. Somebody would like to take a look at the new Edge, for those of us who haven't seen it.
So, guys, one thing, and I think I pointed this out earlier, Internet Explorer is not gone, right? So Internet Explorer is still here. It doesn't go away. Microsoft realizes that there's millions of applications out there and websites and old versions of Java and so forth that still are going to need Internet Explorer, right? So it's still here. But what you also get is Microsoft Edge, which is this browser here. So the easiest way I can describe Microsoft Edge is it really is a heavily slimmed down version of IE with just about everything pulled out of it that enables a lot of the legacy functionality. Part of the reason IE gets bad press and can be a slower browser is just because Microsoft, with Internet Explorer, even though they put out new versions, they're continuously trying to support previous feature sets. They're trying to make sure that IE 11 doesn't not work with something that worked in IE 10 and so forth from just an HTML or from a browser-based perspective. What they did with Edge is give you a much more slimmed-down browser that is just flat-out much faster. So by default, when you talk to Cortana, so if you say like, hey Cortana, browse to CNN, it's gonna, if you see how quick that pops open, it's like, and you can tell Cortana to use different browsers, but the point of it is that Microsoft Edge it's very fast. It does not support a lot of things that you could do in IE. Like, right now they're going to be adding plugins and things like that, but you can't install a lot of third-party add-ons. You can't, essentially clutter it up with different things. You know, I know everybody on the phone has, you know, been at their parents' house and they ask why the computer's slow, and you open it up and IE has 37 Yahoo toolbars with 16 other things connected to it, you know, that eats up 90% of the computer's resources. You just can't flat out install the majority of any of those things in Edge. So in Edge, and I've even found it already, I've run across multiple situations where I was trying to run something and it just says right in there, you know, this is not going to run in Edge because Edge will not support this, that, or the other thing. And the intent with it is not to ever make it support those things. It's intended to be a very fast browser that's going to be leveraged for, you know, quick web searches and watching videos and integration with things like Cortana. And the goal is to maintain that speed as opposed to give it the ability to add additional feature sets, plugins, and so forth. But that doesn't mean you can't still go run IE and, you know, use all the different versions of Java and do everything you could traditionally do with IE. And that doesn't mean you can't install things like, you know, Chrome here and have plugins like I have here and so forth. But Edge is this. Edge is just a very fast, and that's been my experience. It's extremely fast, but it's extremely slimmed down as well, and that's how we're able to do that. Is there any questions specific about Edge, guys, or just that, Anna?
That was it. They just wanted to, you know, hear your little demo about it. And
yeah, I mean, it's nice, guys. I don't even know. I can tell you, I don't notice really that I'm in it. When I'm in it, you know, I've gotten in the habit of using Cortana for all sorts of stuff because I find it super useful, and Cortana launches Edge. So, and of course, Cortana hears me talking. As a side note, you can change the call for that. You know, so by default, hey Cortana is the call. You can tell it to listen for different things. You can also tell it to refer to you as different things. But by default, when you use Cortana and it's anything web search or web related, Cortana pulls up Edge. So I actually end up using Edge quite a bit just because that's where Cortana pulls up. And you know, like I said, for 95% of things, it works great. But like if I want to go and log into you know, my corporate environment where I enter my timesheets and things like that, it doesn't work because that requires the ability for the browser to accept the plugin to be installed, and that plugin is A, not written for Edge, and B, Edge doesn't want to allow that kind of stuff because it wants to just maintain the speed of it. So that's Edge. Is not a ton to it. It's very fast, and it kind of just works. Yeah. And guys, there's so much. And one thing I want to make sure that people understand about this session. We're doing everything we can today to try to, you know, talk about some of the new feature sets, talk about some of the new security options, talk about some of the new things in Windows 10 that are going to be compelling in a business environment, show you guys a little bit of things. There is so many new features in Windows 10 that we did not even get close to talking about. And we'd love the opportunity to come back and sit down and talk with you. Obviously, guys, the focus of today's conversation is Windows 10. Core BTS is a Microsoft Gold partner with many competencies, many additional silver competencies. We do large-scale work at corporations ranging from, you know, 20 seats to 15,000 seats. We do a lot of large-scale architecture design. We're in the middle of many large Office 365 migrations and Active Directory upgrades and Windows XP end-of-life projects and System Center deployments and Windows 10, you know, helping customers, you know, analyze Windows 10 and put together future state projects. So we do a lot of complicated work across the entire Microsoft spectrum. Obviously, today's webinar was focused on Windows 10, and we'd love to come out and talk to you about how Windows 10 could help you and maybe have it fit in your environment, and also see how it fits with the other Microsoft lifecycle products, folks. The next version of Office is coming out very soon. Windows 2003 is end of life. Windows XP is end of support, end of life. There's a lot of different features coming out in these different products, a lot of new products on the Microsoft side right now. So really, the opportunity for us to come out, sit down, and whiteboard that with you and just give you some feedback and help you understand what's going on in the marketplace right now in the Microsoft space. We'd love to do that. There's no charge for any of that. So that's you know, Core BTS is offering to you. And Windows 10 can absolutely can be and should be part of that discussion. If I can point out one thing, and I was on the train of thought there, guys, about the fact that there's so many new things in Windows 10 that we can't even hit on. Right before we started this webinar, I thought to myself, Anna's going to be recording the webinar, like she said, and she'll post it and send it out to everybody. But I thought to myself, you know, I wonder if I can record my screen somehow easily so that I could capture the audio, because, again, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get the Cortana audio to come across to everybody. So I started, searching real quick, and I had like 5 minutes. And, traditionally you'd have to install something like Snagit or some third-party product to do screen recording. So I was searching, and real quick I found out that Windows 10 has something built in that I wasn't aware of. So if you hit Windows key G, what it'll do is it'll bring open an actual, so we open something here. See, this says, do you want to open game bar? Which seems weird, but just by hitting Windows key G, I can open that, and I just lost it. You open this little thing here, and you can actually record. I can say start recording. So there we are. Now we're recording. That is built into Windows 10. I had no idea it existed. I had never heard of it, before 5 minutes before we started this presentation. So I guess my point is there is a lot of features in Windows 10 that are new, some which may be applicable in a corporate space, some which may not be applicable, most of which you can toggle on and off or modify their functionality through group policy or through other enterprise management suites in the Microsoft stack. But don't assume that there's not something in Windows 10 that might be compelling to you or your organization. I found something that was useful to me, in 3 minutes before we started this presentation. So, again, I appreciate everybody's time. My name is Timothy Flight. I am the Microsoft Practice Director here at Core BTS. Dan Christie from my team has been on. Dan's been keeping track of any questions and things you guys sent over. So if there's anything we didn't hit, or like Anna said, if there were some questions that were more specific to certain applications or certain scenarios, Dan and I will follow up on those and get back to you. Again, my offer to you is that we are more than willing to come out and sit down and have a discussion about, where you're at in your life cycle. You might not think you're ready. You might not be ready to take on Windows 10, but you might be, interested in Office 365 or getting rid of Windows 2003 and doing other things that are preparatory, for an eventual Windows 10 deployment. Microsoft and Core BTS can help you across the board. So please feel free to follow up with us. We'd love to come out and meet you guys.
Great. Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us this morning. On behalf of myself and our team here today of Tim and Dan, thank you for joining us. We will send out a link to this recording for you guys likely tomorrow or the next day. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to marketing.team@corebts.com. And again, just a reminder that any specific questions that we did not get to, we will follow up with an email here in the next couple of days. So hope everybody has a wonderful Wednesday and a great rest of the week. Thank you.